Hey, welcome to today's 10-8 podcast coming from the Department of Public Safety's recording studio. Glad to be here today. We're going to have a great conversation. My name is Chris Chapman, and before we get started, I want to thank the governor for giving us the opportunity to serve in these positions. Obviously, the Attorney General, Tim Griffin, for funding the build-out of the podcast center, and Colonel Mike Hager for his leadership for the Department of Public Safety. But today, we've got some special guests with us. We brought in some team members, and we're going to talk about auditing processes and our new jail and jailer training that we built out. So let's introduce everybody. Go ahead, Eric.
So my name is Eric Waycaster. I serve as the Deputy Director of the Standards Division of Law Enforcement Standards and Training.
Jason Large, Deputy Director of Training for the Arkansas Division of Law Enforcement Standards and Training.
Ma'am?
Amie Martin, Senior CLEST Agent, and I do audits and standards.
Brian Johnson, Senior CLEST Agent with Standards.
A.K.A. Deacon.
Calvin Bishop, CLEST Agent. I also do jail standards.
All right, fantastic. So, Eric, going to kind of turn the show over to you. We'll bounce some questions off everybody today, but let's talk about the new processes that we've put in place and how they are designed to help agencies and push this information out there so everybody knows what we're talking about.
Yeah, so I think some folks that are listening to the podcast and watching may not realize how important the audits and standards and jail training. Some of them may not even realize it falls under our responsibilities, but it is part of what we do with law enforcement standards and training. We're in charge of compliance with standards. We have the training side of the house. Jailers is an important part of that. And we've really been working on our processes over the last several months and moving forward on how to increase our efficiencies and capacities on the audit side of the house, and then really working on our content and our delivery on the jail side of the house. And I'm so glad that the three agents are here so that we can kind of brag on them a little bit and push out that information about what they're doing and what they're accomplishing, because it's good stuff. It really is good stuff.
Yeah, so talking to chiefs and sheriffs across the state, a couple of areas that just create huge liabilities for especially our sheriff's department is our jailer training, detention centers. Obviously, if you got the luxury of having a detention facility, we know there's a ton of liability there. So that training aspect, but also just the audits to make sure everybody's in compliance with their training standards and everything along those lines. It just decreases the liability that agencies have.
Absolutely. So I think we'll jump right into it. Just start with jail standards. Okay. Calvin, I want you to kind of tell people that don't know you, like we all know you. But well, first off, how much notice did you have before you were told you were going to be on a podcast today?
Probably about 3 minutes.
All right, congratulations. Good.
Well, now I will say this. Calvin's the most recent addition to our team. He was our number one draft choice for 2024. If you didn't know it, he's got a history of maybe playing some professional sports. So yes. when I say he was our number one draft choice, he really was drafted. That's pretty cool. So we're glad to have him on the team. But Calvin, I appreciate, one, you coming in and taking ownership of your section. You came in with a great attitude, basically rebuilt the jailers training and the jail administrators training. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, when I came in, jailer training was offered 3 times a year, and coming from corrections, then transitioning to law enforcement, I took it upon myself to try to bring the jailers up to speed because I felt like they get lost behind.
Yeah.
So I created the online jail standards course, where it's a 56-hour course online. They can still take it in person as well, because we still offer 3 times a year. So with that, I also said, what can I do to help the jail administrators and the supervisors by creating the jail administrator course to help supervisors manage people. Currently, I'm trying to roll out an advanced jailer course to try to keep the jailers up afloat to some of the different things that are going on in the jail, within the jail, as well as creating a CIT unit for the jails to work with crisis intervention and also emergency response teams, trying to roll that out so jailers can have those opportunities to deal with those situations.
Yeah, so one of the things I've heard from the feedback is that the new training is very relevant. Yes. And you talked about some of those topics. And so how do we engage our jailers, making sure that all that information is relevant, up to date? Because it's the first time the jail administrators and the jailers training had been redone in 10, 15 years probably.
Right. I kind of stay abreast of it. I also talk to the jailers. When I go out and do the criminal detention review committees, I ask jailers, what is it that you need? What is it that you would need from us as an agency to make your job easier? What classes would you like to see? And I go back and try to do research and reach out to my resources to try to bring that to those jailers so they don't be as stagnant as they were 10 to 15 years ago or 3 years ago, things of that nature.
Yeah. So, Jason, you recently came from the Sheriff's Department. You had a jail. I think the point that sometimes our jailer and detention officers do get overlooked, the fact that we're pouring resources and efforts into them, I hope that's greatly appreciated. And, I mean, I love what we're trying to do.
Well, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Your detention staff actually is a huge backbone of the criminal justice system. And so a lot of times, a lot of your effort and time and energy is put on an enforcement side, your patrol, your CID, your SWAT. Detention officers need that training more than anything. You know, some agencies hire at 18, so 18 years old, they need a good baseline of training before they're put in those housing units and have to start addressing issues.
Yeah, and turnover. And
So it's
turnover in our
huge.
detention centers. So having that training available for them online and then in person on a regular basis where they're not having to wait. Because I'm assuming, based on what I know as the director, maybe we do that on request, right? So it's not just 3 times a year, but you'll also go out and take that to the field as requested.
Yes, if an agency doesn't have a certified instructor, I will travel, go ahead and teach the course at the agency as well, or contact surrounding agencies and allow them to attend the training as well if they can't participate online or 3 times a year. Yes.
Yeah, and you brought up another good point. You talked about the crisis intervention training, and I know you're a part of that. You're one of the instructors you taught last week, and I appreciate the fact that all 3 of you do other things than your primary assignments. But that training is relevant for our detention staff as well as it is for our road deputies and patrol officers, right?
Yes.
I mean, they need to learn those techniques and understand that de-escalation is where we want to go.
Yes.
So how does that play into the jailer's role?
For the jailer's role, my goal is to get everyone spun up on the CIT training with verbal judo and de-escalation techniques, because it's easy to go in and just put your hands on someone, handcuff them, pepper spray them, take them up to medical, lock them in a cell, things of that nature. But if we can de-escalate them and bring the use of forces down, that would also bring down the amount of use of forces and lawsuits with the agency.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we were trying to get them spun up on how to de-escalate someone, especially if they're having a mental health crisis, how to recognize it, how to de-escalate them, and get them the resources and help they need.
Now you see why he was our number 1 draft choice in 2024.
I was also impressed that you traded up to get him, Director. That was a great
Yes,
job.
it was a 3-way trade. I mean,
did
it was
awesome.
it was impressive. I was doing everything we could to bring him in house.
I was very
Yeah.
impressed.
Yeah.
So just briefly, Calvin, if you would, for folks that, like, if we have sheriffs or jail administrators out there that are considering, latching on and using you as all this, I want you to talk just briefly. You bring a lot of credibility to the space of corrections because of your background. Can you just kind of tell the folks about your background and your experience and stuff before you came to us?
Okay. Before coming to CLEST, I started my career at Louisiana State Penitentiary. I worked at Angola. I worked Camp J for approximately 10 years or so before transferring as a lieutenant to St. Gabriel, Louisiana, Elaine Hunt Correctional Facility. So I started my career in the prison. I love what I do. I love talking to people. I love working with people. And a lot of my knowledge comes from working in the jail around a lot of inmates and convicts. That's where I started training and gaining a lot of knowledge from. From there, I transferred up. We moved to Oklahoma. I was a deputy there, and I actually worked a special housing unit. And that was a different experience in itself, having to work a special housing unit, dealing with people in crisis every day. How can I effectively do my job with these people if they're having a crisis and they're not understanding what I'm saying? That's what made me become a CIT officer, which is now deemed CIT. From there, I did transition to the street, did my time as a road deputy, wrote a bunch of tickets. And then moving to Arkansas, I worked at the Arkansas State Hospital. So then I felt like my calling was, okay, now I'm dealing with a lot of people in crisis every day. Didn't have a gun, didn't have handcuffs or things of that nature. So I had to de-escalate and talk my way out of a lot of situations at the Arkansas State Hospital. Transitioned over to probation and parole. I taught there, and then I went to the training department because I saw a need for how do we get someone that's on probation and parole to do what we want them to do without always having to violate them and lock them up. Then transitioned to Pulaski County Juvenile Court, working with juveniles, trying to mentor and de-escalate them because there was a need there dealing with DHS and juvenile court. And then I transitioned over here once I saw a position came available. So try to give all the knowledge that I've gained over the years to the officers. when I do teach classes, I try to give as much knowledge and make myself readily available, whether it's defensive tactics, CIT, training. So my belief is if you can do it wrong in training, that means you can do it right once you're back on the floor in your facility.
Yeah,
so that's my
reflection
purpose to
training,
do
for
it
sure.
there.
Great philosophy.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm glad you shared all that, because I know in these classes that experience lends itself to that credibility and just automatically helps those students and who's taking your classes, just gives them that buy-in. Like they know that they can trust you because you've been there, you've done that.
Yes.
Yeah, it really, to me, we talk about credibility and legitimacy for the division. I think you coming in and taking ownership of this section of what we do has really increased our credibility with those out in the LE world. When you speak from a position of authority. You've been there, done that, and just the fact you've taken ownership has been a huge step forward for us. So, I appreciate it, and I look forward to people contacting you so we can get this training out there.
Yes.
So, all right, audits.
All right.
It's kind of a scary word. It's kind of scary. It's not designed to be scary, but.
Well, all right. Let me say this. I've said this so many times. So we're law enforcement standards and training. And if you have a standard and the standard isn't enforced, do you in fact have a standard? I'd argue all day long that you do not.
I would agree with you, Counselor.
All right. So we've got Brian Johnson, we got Amie Martin, our leaders of our audit team, and we're kind of changing things up, right? Maybe changing things up a little slightly. Yes. Brian, you've been here forever. Is it a little different?
It's a little different. Initially, like when I got here 16 years ago, kind of audits were done on request or as we call them problem children, or when we didn't have juggling other stuff, we kind of went out and did them here and there, but nothing along the lines now where it's a concentrated effort to kind of make sure we're out and doing audits and kind of, like I said, not being the boogeyman, but kind of helping agencies stay within compliance because it's in their best interest.
So what are some things that we're looking for when we go out and go on site and we go for an audit?
Amie,
you want to take that one?
Making sure they have all their paperwork in their files, whatever training they have to have, the 24 hours a year, the racial profiling, the cultural diversity, making sure they've got that for this year, making sure they were up to date last year.
Making sure they're in compliance, right?
Yes.
Like we have the Commission on Law Enforcement Standards and Training, which is who we all work for. They've said these are the rules. This is the minimum standards for an officer. An officer that's full-time has to have this kind of training. An officer that's specialized has to have this kind of training. Part-time, auxiliary, they all have this initial training, which has to be completed in a certain amount of time, right?
Yes.
correct.
And then they have a certain amount of annual training under certain categories and hours, and they got to complete that every year. And we're doing the follow-ups, right?
Yes.
Making sure that everybody's in compliance.
Yeah, and doing the audits is, for me, is a good. I don't know about Amie, but I've done it enough now to where, like I said, I've kind of built a rapport across the state because I've been here. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people, when I do show up, most of the time it's not on a bad note, but more, to kind of make sure that they are where they are. And I always explain to them, this will benefit you in the long run because if an officer has an issue, officer involved shooting or anything like that, we are one of the first, and I usually say 3 agencies that people are going to call to see if that officer is in compliance with what the commission and the legislature says. And so it's best for us to be able to say, yes, this officer has met it and he's up to snuff on all this training. Right. So when you put it in those regards and those terms to a lot of agencies, I think it sits better.
Yeah, for sure. Like we're not necessarily here to be the boogeyman necessarily. We're going to hold agencies to the standard. We're going to hold, we're going to enforce the compliance and enforce the standard. But the idea is we want them to get in compliance.
Yeah. Now, if we have to be the boogeyman,
sometimes
I'm not the boogeyman.
Which fingers you going to point at?
Seriously, in that, there will be times as if anybody has followed us in the last year or so, we've had to be that boogeyman because agencies sometimes don't take us serious for whatever reason, and we do have to show, okay, look, this is the capability that we have given to us through statute and rule that if you're not in compliance, these are steps that we can take to make sure either you come into compliance or you don't work.
Well, and would you agree with me that y'all just did a bunch of audits last week, and good stuff from what everything I've seen, good stuff, good records, very smooth. The administrators of those agencies took pride in what their records were and presented you with packets, and it was a smooth audit.
Yes.
Would you almost, my opinion, and I'm just asking if you agree with me, it's almost disrespectful to those agencies that are doing it the right way and are doing all the extra work, not to hold the agencies that are dropping the ball to comply.
I agree.
Yeah,
I mean,
yes.
they're doing all that work, right? Because it's work. I mean, you got
work.
an agency of sometimes it's big agencies, sometimes it's small agencies, but it's work to make sure that you're doing what you need to do, and we want to we want to hold the standard across the board.
And
sure.
I tell agencies, once you get the audit packet or the audit stuff in order, just leave it there.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't change. If we audit you today and you good, 6 months from now, we shouldn't audit you and now you all in disarray.
If you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And sometimes I know all the agencies have a lot of turnover.
Yeah.
And people come in and take a file, take a birth certificate, take this. But again, it's just incumbent and it's easy if they just keep everything where it's supposed to be, and they won't have the issues.
For sure.
So I appreciate, again, the ownership. I think you guys have taken an aggressive approach to this. It seems like when we started having these discussions a couple years ago, when we came into these roles, it was mostly complaint-driven.
Yes.
And so being aggressive, I mean, what's your goal? How many audits do you anticipate doing per year? And
So let's be bold.
let's be bold. I like being bold.
No, I'm gonna put it out there. So our goal is 400 audits a year.
Wow.
Yeah. Hey, big fearless goal. Let's go after it.
All right, so Deacon, in your career, do you believe you've done 400 audits in the last 16 years?
Me personally,
That's what I'm saying.
I've come close to it.
All right.
Because now,
Right.
mind you, in 16 years, well, a lot of those years, the first years I was here, I was pretty much the only one doing audits
Right.
because the other was getting ready to retire, so he wasn't doing a bunch of running around. So everything that was pretty much done audit-wise, I did it.
Yeah.
So I got a little bit of a jump on that.
Wow, but I'm just
But-
saying. So
But it's
overall, how
good.
many departments do we have in the state right now?
We're running 800-ish agencies.
800.
Yeah.
So we should be in agencies at least once every 2 years, maybe every 3 years, conservatively.
Yeah.
And that should help keep everybody on track. And if we're keeping everybody in compliance, then that's decreasing their liability.
Yeah.
Increasing our professionalism. Look, I believe we're legislatively mandated to do this, and
Yes.
and the fact that y'all are doing it at this rate just shows again
Well-
how professional you guys are.
And we're not just showing up, surprise out of the blue. We're agencies should have, if they haven't received it already, they should be receiving it soon. An email that outlines this is what our agents are going to be looking for when they come to your agency. So you know the answer to the test before the test is given. All right. So they have the opportunity to say, okay, I need to do this. I need to make sure that all my officers are following this, and this. So they're getting that on the heads up. We're also taking a proactive approach on the training. And we've already been doing that in this previous year, where we're sending out notification 3 times a year to let the agencies and the officers know when they're not in compliance for the year. Like, hey, you haven't hit your minimums for this year, you've got 6 months. Hey, you haven't hit your minimums for this year, coming up on the end of it. So we're working on that, trying to be proactive too. Because if we're not proactive and we're not being as efficient as possible, then that big fearless goal of 400 audits is a dream. It's not a goal.
Yeah.
So we're putting the processes in place where it is an achievable goal. We'll put it that way. Right. It is ambitious, but it is achievable.
And so again, that's going to take a team effort. I know, Calvin, you've been asked to jump in on some audits, and we're so small that efficiency is really a key word in us performing at the level that we're going to have to perform at to achieve our goals. So I appreciate you guys all working together and putting this together. But it is aggressive.
Yeah, I want to brag on them for just a second. Like, for everybody that doesn't realize this, when we talk about a small team, we're talking about 400 audits a year. These 3 agents and 1 administrative assistant. We're having 400 audits that are running through 4 people.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy lift.
Yeah, that's taking efficiency and adding a syllable or two to it.
Do we have the money in the budget to pay for the gas? Let me ask you that. So, do we have the vehicles? No, but I do think it makes the profession across the state brings us to a higher level. It decreases liability. It keeps our officers in compliance. That's part of what we do. Everybody forgets, they concentrate, Jason, on your side of the house, on the training side of the house, but the standard side is just as important. Honestly, in a lot of ways, it touches more things. Fantastic.
I feel like sometimes Jason gets them there, and we need to keep him there. You kind of think about the way the way the two sides of the house kind of lend themselves to it, Yeah.
So I guess I have a question for each of you is as you roll out this checklist, and I love that agencies have a checklist like this is what we're looking for. What is your suggestion? Is it your suggestion maybe they do a pre-audit themselves? And the idea is they start looking at it and kind of going through that process. So would you suggest they start that process before you even call?
The goal is for them to start. And once we get this out, this is my mind.
Yeah.
Once this is out, then agencies should automatically say, okay, they'll come to see me at some point. I need to go ahead and start looking at my stuff, do an internal audit.
Got it.
To make sure. And we have, over the years, always sent out an audit sheet. If anybody calls and say, hey, can you send us an audit sheet?
Great.
We send them the actual audit sheet. So they could actually do that and be prepared on the front end. Before we even get there, they should be prepared 10 months before we probably even show up.
Sure.
Because, again, when we send it out, you know more so than what we do what your officers are missing.
Yeah.
And, again, I tell people, some agencies, smaller agencies, have a lot of turnover. And people go in and take a birth certificate, or they'll take this, or they'll take that. But if you look at your officers' files periodically,
Gotcha.
then you will know, oh, okay, I've got this checklist. It's not here, so I need to, what happened, hey, officer such and such, what happened to your birth certificate?
Got
I
it.
need another copy of it.
Okay.
Because usually that's what happens. You have a lot of officers moving from agency to agency. And so when they go from one agency to the other, they raid their file at this agency and turn that stuff into the other agency.
Yeah.
And so stuff comes up missing. But yes, to do their own audit, yes.
So that pre-audit aspect, could that shorten the time that you are on site with them looking at their documentations? So kind of just maybe that push from an agency. I mean, we both just a year ago roughly came from agencies that goes from a 4-hour aspect to an hour aspect because their documentation's key. Would you agree with that?
I would agree wholeheartedly. And so the better agencies,
Sure.
the ones that are familiar with it and I guess accustomed to doing it, usually there is a section in the file that they actually have everything that we look for when we get there.
Got it.
The other ones have a file that's 2 inches thick that everything is somewhere in between all these papers in this 2 inch that we have to actually finger through. So if they actually would put it in a section, and I think that's kind of what
Yes.
we've been telling them, just put everything we look for in one section. That way when we get there, all we got to do is look in this section and not these other 4 or 5 sections in this folder.
Sure.
So instead of taking 5 minutes to go through this folder, it might take me a minute.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm with you. So, I think that's what I truly applaud all three of you and your team and what you're doing under, the director and the deputy director's leadership is you're wanting to put professionalism in law enforcement. We have great agencies in the state of Arkansas.
Yes.
And the citizens of the state deserve a professional law enforcement officer and agency. And y'all are a key component in regards to that. And so, Amie, you came over 6 months ago, 8 months ago. Had
Yeah.
you seen the difference between the training side and the standard side at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of the training side, basically it's kind of like what he said. We get them there, but, it's our job also to keep them there, keep them at that professional level, and keep them into the training. And having that checklist is great when you can walk in there and you open up the folder and your checklist is on one side and everything's checked off and you're just sitting here flipping through the pages going, yep, that's there, that's there, that's there.
And then you're moving on to
And
the
then
next
you move on to the next one.
So is it, and I know three of you spend a lot of time on the phone. Agencies, if they have questions, comments, of course, could they reach out to you for clarification?
Yes.
Yes, anytime. We are always available
Good.
for questions. And I tell most agencies, I prefer you call me on the front end.
Yes.
It's easier for us to take care of a situation on the front end than trying to clean it up on the back end.
Absolutely.
So, yes, by
So
all
how,
means.
how does everyone get a hold of the three of you? I mean, do we go to the website? What's the easiest way to make contact with you guys?
I think for each body, it may be a little bit different. For me, You can either call the office, the main number, or call my direct line. Okay. And a lot of people have that. That's on the website. Mm-hmm. They do emails. The emails kind of can go to whoever, so you never know who's going to get it. But either way, however you want to contact us, contact us.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, everybody's contact information is on the website for those that are listening and viewing. We're happy to help. All 6 of us are on the website,
Yeah.
but we're all here to help.
Well, I appreciate the fact that, look, we're building relationships. We're really pushing law enforcement to be better across the state. This is a key component of that. I think I appreciate you guys having 3 minutes of
No prep time.
warning, no prep time coming in doing this today. Scheduling error on the director's part, but it's important to get this information out there.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of you and the efforts that you've put in, and it's just making law enforcement better across the state of Arkansas.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
Well, guys, I think that's going to kind of wrap up the show today. Great topics. I appreciate the information. We want to tell everybody thank you. Please tune in for our next episode. Yeah, we want to tell everybody out there we appreciate everything that you're doing to make the state of Arkansas a safe and great place. Our law enforcement community, all 14,000 brothers and sisters out there, we appreciate your efforts, and we're here to assist in any way we can. So hope you guys have a great day, and thanks for tuning in.